What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of two average looking white dudes with glasses and beards. This is actually the FN story. I'm joined alongside my good friend Panda. What's going on, bro?
Hey, what's up, man? Listen, good to be back. Good to be a repeat customer of the FN story. Yes, I paid him to be here. I got a lot of shit on Twitter recently, so
Ooh,
I got to pay to get exposed. I'm just kidding, guys. This is fully a joke. But no, man. Listen, it's good to be back. I'm pumped to get to talk to you again.
awesome. Thanks for joining, man. I know we talk all the time, but it's nice to have you join. And for you guys joining, listening, if you are on any kind of platform, please leave a comment or review or reply. It really helps the podcast a lot. Would greatly appreciate that. But let's dive right in, Mr. Panda. Let's talk about what you're working on. Recently, you've started to post these like real, I don't want to say edgy, but like well produced, kind of just conversational pieces on
Yeah.
Twitter. So, like, what inspired that? And let's talk about some of the things that you've talked about already.
Yeah, no, of course. So this is a new series I've been kind of for you, as you know, because you and I talk a lot for years, trying to figure out what kind of content I wanted to produce in the scene, and like, there's a lot of great analyst content. Like, obviously, Reese Hub is crushing it when it comes to like top tier quality analyst content. And I looked at that and I was like, you know what, maybe that's not for me. So I try to figure out some another lane, right? And then I was like, okay, well, like, who am I and what value can I bring that no one else is really touching right now? And so I thought back to me as a person, my background. For those that don't know, like, I come from a corporate background. I worked for Fortune 500 companies like Disney, Marriott, the Kushner Company, which is a big real estate investment company. Like, I've done a lot in my personal work life before I started working in esports. And so I was like, okay, so I have all this business experience, right? What if I take the business acumen that I have and blend it with my love and passion for Fortnite? And so that's what's created what I've been kind of like calling behind the scenes the full picture series. That's not what I'm officially calling it. I don't know if I will ever officially call it anything, right? But it's a series of videos where I give in-depth thought and analysis on the decisions that are made within the business of Fortnite, right? And so the first video, which was probably the most conversational of the bunch, was a prize pool video. I talked about the current state of Fortnite prize pools, where they are at, and while there's an open discussion about, oh, we need more prize pools, we need them dispersed different, we need this and that, I broke down why the prize pools most likely are the way that they are, and I also broke down how great our prize pool ecosystem is in comparison to any other esport. And so I talked about that a little bit in depth. That caused a lot of conversation. But that was the point of these videos, right? Is
Okay.
I want to educate and start conversations that other people, whether they don't want to do it for their brand's sake or whatever else, like they avoid doing, right? So a good example of this, I was going to talk about the Russia situation with players. You and I talked about it last week. That was going to be last week's video, but I scrapped it because there's just too many thoughts that it's hard to give a full like breakdown of the situation without full context from every party, right? And
Yeah.
it would just take too much to do. But I retweeted some thoughts on it and whatnot. But those are the conversations I want to have so that I can share my understanding that most people in the Fortnite scene don't have because they're younger. They don't have that business experience. They don't understand what's going on behind the scenes of a multi-billion-dollar company like I do.
So we'll get back to the whole Russia situation in a second, but like,
Yeah.
let's talk about the prize pool because I think Reese also actually just teased this morning that he's working on a video about the solo Cash Cup prize pool, or at least prize pools in general. It's a topic that
Mhm.
comes up pretty much every season as soon as prize pools are announced. And it seems like, regardless of whatever the prize pools put out, everyone is upset because the bar was set at $100 million for World Cup. And since then, we've pretty much come down year after year. And over the past couple of years, kind of flatlined as far as like large prize winnings for the total community, which isn't a bad thing. I think it's about 10 to 15 million in prizing per year over the past 2-3 years, which is still
Yeah.
a lot of money. But at the
Well,
same time,
actually, this year alone, over $16 million in prizing.
okay. So it's
full
about
contact.
right, the 10 to 15.
Yeah. So 16, it was like I actually had Lash do the numbers. Shout out Lash. He's like
Shouts out.
he, he's just full of information all the time. But no, it was like over $16 million this year, and it was a similar prize pool last year. And that was one of the things I talked about in the prize pool video was like the cost, not only frontline costs of a prizing, right? You have to pay all the support team at Epic, which I'm sure salaries at Epic are not small. No game dev salaries are small, right? So let's say you have another $2 million in salaries, right? Let's just say hypothetical. And then you and I know this one, oh too well, production cost
Oh yeah.
to produce an FNCS. And mind you, I am not saying this based on numbers that have been given to me. I'm basing this off of my experience and overall knowledge of the space. I would say each FNCS to produce a live show in Copenhagen would cost anywhere between $200,000 and $500,000, depending on if you include media day into that or not. So, like, people don't realize there's millions and millions in spend outside of the actual prize pools themselves, and it's millions in spend that other esports don't necessarily do the same of, right? So
Hmm.
like look at like Call of Duty for example. Obviously Call of Duty is one of the more established esports and that's been around for a bit. Obviously they're going through some rocky stuff right now. But you look at like the Call of Duty Raleigh show when we saw it was like a major Raleigh event. Our stage in Copenhagen was nicer than their set at the Raleigh Convention Center, which I mean, we kind of I think we had some bias too because we got to experience the invitational at the same venue and you could see such a drastic difference and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe maybe Call of Duty's more established, maybe they're getting more viewers right now, but like Fortnite definitely went all out in their presence in that invitational
Right.
that made me look at that major like, dang, I'd rather be in Copenhagen looking at the stage that we have than what they produced in that space. But realistically, I love these conversations. I love having them, and I hope to continue to have them more. The next step for me is I'm going to post a video, and then that night or the night after, I plan on doing like Twitter Spaces. So
Mm.
hopping on and having these debates that are happening in my comment section in a voice format for the same audience. So that's the goal within the next month or so is to start doing those regularly. But I definitely want to get a little bit of structure to that before I just start throwing people in the Fortnite scene a voice, and then
Makes
all of a
sense.
sudden they're screaming racial slurs or doing whatever. Like, because like obviously we know a lot of people in the Fortnite space, and not everybody is like that. But you have to be careful of who you platform in a way like that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things people have started to take for granted as far as prize pools go is like how many opportunities there are for people to earn money that is just like most games have this one track, and if you're not one of the top players you're not earning money. Like there are possibilities in a solo cash cup, a zero build cash cup, a duo cash cup. There's third party tournaments, there's freaking ladders like every week. I mean, between Manu, Noble, Practice Server, Bryson, there's somebody hosting a money prizing type of tournament pretty much almost every day of the week, or at least once a week you could find some way to make some money, which is very much taken for granted in Fortnite. I feel like people
Hmm.
don't appreciate how much money is being thrown around and the availability of being able to earn things, because
Yeah,
even some of those smaller tournaments aren't going to have a full top tier pro lobby in them, so it
yeah,
gives people chances to earn money. And if you're a pro and you're willing to enter some of those, I mean, we were just talking about a player earlier, Pump is willing to like play in any tournament. Dude just loves the
yeah.
game and wants to compete, so like he's all about joining and playing in tournaments, which is sick. Yeah, I mean, the point though is that there's so much money being thrown out there for the general player base that people need to understand this is not a regular thing in other games.
Well, and that's the conversation we need to start having, and I plan to have more of those in the future videos. But the conversation needs to stop comparing to what we used to have, and it needs to be compared to other esports at the same time. Because like I've talked to Rocket League casters, for example, that are like, dude, your bubble scene is phenomenal, and I'm looking at them like, what do you mean bubble scene, right? And so, bubble scene is like, if you don't know at home, is this scene of events that happen through the third party system. Other esports titles don't really have them, right? Like Warzone has the official WSOE, and now they occasionally have like an eFuse event, right? Like this Nicki Minaj event that's coming up. Rocket League occasionally has some third party events. They're much smaller in pricing than any of like the regular ones we have. And then like forget like Overwatch or Valorant, right? Like or League. Like the League and Valorant have some stuff, but like the the open ecosystem and the available money doesn't exist really outside of Fortnite. And so, like, we have to stop comparing to the World Cup days because those World Cup days are long gone. There was an article that came out the year after saying how Epic looked at World Cup as like a flop to them, financially and a business decision. So obviously they're not going to go back that route. But the amount of support that Fortnite still gives to the comp scene, despite it being less than 1% of the actual player base, is actually pretty awesome. And hopefully I think players will start to, with more conversations, players will start to realize this. I know like I've had conversations and some people have really appreciated the videos, like Cease and TK have commented on them positively, like they like that this information is going out there. It does seem to be a lot of the EU side of things don't want to have a more open discussion about this stuff, but nevertheless that is fine with me. I just want to start these conversations. And no, I am allowed, like, for anybody that is questioning whether or not I'm allowed to have an opinion of my own, well, guess what? I'm not. No, I'm just kidding, guys. I genuinely can say whatever I want at any point in time. I know that was part of some of the responses to my stuff, and we'll dive into a more intricate subject when we talk about the Russia players. But um, yeah, no, listen, I say what I say. I say what I want to say, but I also don't go on Twitter to farm impressions off of the backs of what will be the popular opinion. If I feel like something needs to be adjusted, changed, I go a different route, a more effective route to get those things adjusted and sorted. And obviously, not everything happens overnight, but I also don't go out of my way to tell everybody what I'm doing.
Well, I think one of the things that I've learned just from being around you is like you're one of the most positive, if not the most positive person that I've ever met. And like some people think it's just an act. And like at first, I've told you this. At
Yeah,
first, I thought it was just an act. I was like, no way is this guy this fucking nice all the time. But like it's true. Like you're just always so nice to people. And then that positivity shows on Twitter, and people are like, no way is this real. No way is like this
yeah.
guy like this. But it's true. Like you genuinely believe these things that you talk about, which then kind of once you understand your mindset makes a lot more sense to the things that you put out on Twitter, the opinions you give, and kind of the mindset that you project on your social media, because that's kind of just who you are. So
Yeah.
let's not get stuck in the prize pool conversation. Like the videos, I do like how you've been putting out this kind of content. When we first talked about it, I was like, oh, like a Chael Sonnen kind of video, like somebody just out here saying like, yeah, dude, like this is how it is. And that's very much appreciated by me, and it seems to be appreciated by some and discussed by many others, which is good for your social media views as long as they keep coming and talking some smack on every single video.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, again, a lot of people do this with the intent to grow their content, right? If I wanted to like focus on content growth and less on discussion, I would solely post this stuff on YouTube, right? But I want this stuff to be on X, right? I want this stuff to be easily accessible to the audience that I have established in a way that will start those conversations, right? And I'll grow the YouTube separately and do stuff and find ways to monetize those things in the future. But right now, my focus is the conversation because not enough people are having it, at least not in our space. But I know you and I have the conversations all the time. Now I get to take some of the conversations that we have and just put it into a video form and say my piece,
And
whether anybody likes it or ultimately doesn't.
And I feel like as much as people hate on Elon Musk for what he's done for Twitter slash X, whatever you want to call it, like the platform to me genuinely feels better. I do feel like a little bit of a bitch paying for a social media platform. Um, Not exactly a fan of that, but like ultimately, I've been able to put these entire podcasts on Twitter. I'm putting an hour long discussion on Twitter, and
Yeah.
I was never able to. I think it was like 2 minutes 20 seconds was what it previously was. So just that possibility, the ability to share longer posts, kind of helps me, and I do appreciate the kind of conversations that it has created around your content too, because again, that's like a 6 to 8 minute video would not be able to be posted previously where all this discussion would be had. So let's shift gears a little bit. You also have been creating YouTube content but for influencer boxing.
Yeah.
Now, tell me more about that, because I am not a big fan of influencer boxing.
Yeah.
I don't really care for it, but you seem to be very involved and creating content on a regular basis.
Yeah, no. So I'm very big, and you've known this about me because we've talked about it with Fortnite specifically. But I'm very big on like only putting my efforts into something that I enjoy, right? So like for me, I'm passionate about Fortnite. That's why I'm here. Like I love Fortnite. There's only one other game that I would ever consider casting. It's Halo, and you and I again have had that discussion. But like, um, when I'm passionate about something, I like to give my energy to it, and I love the crossover boxing stuff, like the drama around the sport. Like I love boxing in general, but then this crossover space is like introduced what I love about like my everyday influencer and put it into what I love about the sport. And so I've decided to start creating content around it, doing some more stuff in that space. And while I haven't been posting it as much on Twitter, originally I was going to post the boxing video and the Fortnite video on Twitter each week. I felt like it was causing some delusion of like the boxing content, and I'd rather that go to the people in a platform that would want to see it. So I'm leaving that just straight to YouTube now. But when it comes to that type of content, I want to bring a like a voice that is more casual, but still has a good understanding of like what's going on, right? Because I feel like we have in the crossover boxing space, we have a lot of like uh super talented creators that are either like super analytical and it gets kind of boring, or they're like um they're analytical, but sometimes they're like they're just kind of trying to do things to like stretch things, right? So it isn't necessarily like as like valuable. So I'm trying to do like once a week because I enjoy it, throwing up a video. Shout out to Shots by Zach behind the scenes. He's been helping me with those because he's got a really good boxing understanding as well. So he's helping me with the editing portion, making sure that clips play where they're supposed to play, all that stuff. So it's cool. We got a cool dynamic going for the crossover stuff. But like, there's so much stuff that I've been working on. Even outside of that, you and I have had some base conversations. 2024 could very well be a very big year. I can't say too much yet, but we'll see. And
Before you move on, where can people find those boxing videos if they want to?
it's Panda Boxing on YouTube.
You guys heard it, Panda Boxing on YouTube. All right. Now, 2024. Can you share anything that you've got going on or have plans?
I can't, but I can hint that it's going to be a big year with a lot of really cool stuff for a certain video game scene.
Wow. Groundbreaking words that mean absolutely nothing from Mr. Panda. You guys heard it here first on the FN story. Just like Rad, the odor agent, came on here and said, yeah, we have a professional football player that is our main investor and he will come on here at one point. Panda said he's going to do things for a video game that is big at some point next year. So you guys get to hear the craziest things on this podcast if you get to listen. Some absolutely first breaking news. So
Yeah.
expect Panda to put out more stuff coming in the near future. Now you've been really involved in the collegiate space. I haven't necessarily been following that as deeply, obviously, as you have. So what all have you been working on in like collegiate Fortnite specifically?
I've been working on a lot. There's been some things that I've been very fortunate enough to partner directly with Epic on, and other things that I partner with eFuse on to create some really cool stuff for the collegiate space in general. Right now, we're doing the CCA Creative Series, which is all based out of the new Campus Corner map, which has been a long time coming. 404 Creative did a phenomenal job on the map and all the extension maps that go in it. But basically now in throughout a collegiate season, they compete within Campus Corner on these different collegiate based maps. So we have like Niner Esports, which is UNC Charlotte. Their school has a map in Fortnite, and it's one of the maps that are being competed on, right?
Hmm.
And so it's really cool new way to include schools and get them involved in a big way. On top of that, um, I think it's public, and well, maybe I'm sharing an exclusive here for you, but there's going to be like many different faces and banners and things potentially coming to Campus Corner. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. You'll obviously have to hop into the map, hop into the hub if you haven't already. It's a really cool hub, and then play some of the game modes, hardpoint, and so many more. Like it's a lot of fun. I find myself playing it with Ben Lash and a few others quite often when it's not just us casting it or prepping for it in shows.
Yeah, I love to hear that because the collegiate space is something that's kind of been underdeveloped over the past couple of years. It's been an
Yeah.
initiative that Epic definitely wants to happen because it continues to be a thing, but ultimately I feel like it hasn't taken that amazing leap that we've seen from some of the other collegiate spaces. And I think this is a good segue into kind of a tweet I sent you from Genji Arnold is like,
Yeah.
there's not those rivalries. There's not that smack talk. There's not the, Ohio State versus Michigan or like a UNC versus NC State or Duke. Like these rivalries are things that have driven collegiate sports forever, and I think the campus corner is going to be a possible way to do that and try and get people that don't care about Fortnite or video games in general, but it's like, bro, we just beat UNC in Fortnite. Then, there's someone that's like, oh, hell yeah, I love that just
Yeah.
because you've beat your rival. So that's a cool thing to see is the development of the collegiate space and hopefully get more fandom from this creative series into like people that don't normally watch video games or Fortnite just because you're beating another college that you've heard of versus three random players that you would never know what school they went to.
Yeah, and that's I think that's part of the big shift. If you don't know, collegiate events up until this season have primarily been competed on in the battle royale. And so we over the spring semester, we actually went out to schools and tested these schools in creative. So we took some of the early release creative maps that are now part of the campus corner, and we were using them to test out live in these schools and host these events and support these events around the nation. And so it was a really cool initiative that I got to be a part of. Myself, Ben K. We did a lot of work behind the scenes to make those a reality. But we got to travel, we got to do some incredible things. And what that taught us is that those school rivalries, like you mentioned, are some of the best, and it was some of the most effective ways to get students who don't typically play Fortnite or don't participate in Fortnite tournaments to play Fortnite. When we went to we went to Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge, and when we were there, we had LSU competing. We had Southern University. We had a few others. All compete. They all traveled from the local area to compete at Southern University on this map. And the smack talk and the rivalries, the jumping up and screaming into the crowd, like it was special. And it was that rivalry that esports as a whole has lacked, not just Fortnite, but Fortnite obviously has lacked it in a bigger way. But it's that rivalry aspect that just hasn't been there. And to be fair, COD I think kind of tried that with their franchising, and they tried to attach the areas to it. So it's like, oh, support Atlanta, like Atlanta phase, like support all these areas, but it really didn't necessarily work out. I think the way they expected it to, but I think it comes down to something that needs to be built out uh, in a big way, and I think it starts with collegiate because collegiate has um, the established scene already. You take the school; they a lot of these schools have esports programs. If not, they have esports clubs, and you just get them to play, and that's all it takes. Because you know as well as I do, NC State will be talking some smack to a UNC Fortnite team, like so it would
100%.
it would be a lot of fun, and I could see SVG coaching NC State from above, like, but no, it genuinely it would I think it would bring that initial push to proper not franchising but proper team making for what we're doing in our collegiate space in Fortnite. But long term, it's so hard to look like. I keep asking myself, like, what if the NFL just made the ENFL, right? And it's like all the NFL teams, but they all esports teams, but they do every esport. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
imagine you and I, right? Miami Dolphins Fortnite team versus the Jets Fortnite team. You know, you and I be going back and forth the whole time.
Oh
Like
yeah.
and it would be fun, and it would get us engaged in a way that people aren't engaged now. So long term, I think there's a lot of things that can be done with, and I think it all starts with collegiate Fortnite, and that's why I'm so passionate about it because I think collegiate Fortnite easily can be one of the biggest products under the Fortnite umbrella. Just like I think competitive Fortnite can be as well, but we have to make the right steps in the right directions. Unfortunately, competitive Fortnite is too big for me to have like a good way to push people in the right direction, to do the right things, and to create a good ecosystem. The collegiate Fortnite scene, however, I have a lot of pull in, and I have a lot of influence over. So I'm trying to start here, proof of concept. Maybe I can convince the competitive Fortnite scene to change some things, do some more things. Nevertheless, there's so much that I could talk about on this space, but for sure, it's been one of the passion projects I've been working on over the year.
Cool. I love to hear that. And similar to those lines, I'm going to bring up some college football stuff and then read a tweet from Genji Arnold, the CEO of Genji,
Yeah,
who said something that I pretty much agree with. And I think we're lacking some of those bodacious, not super family friendly smack talk conversations and figures within esports in general. So
yeah,
this all comes from last week. Colorado State played Colorado in Boulder. Deion Sanders is like the biggest head coach, most out there personality in all of collegiate sports at the moment. He's every week there's some headlines about something, and the opposing coach said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm an adult, I take off my glasses and hat when I walk into a room. And so then Dion decided, hey, I'm actually going to make a whole stunt about this and screw you, dude, because I'm going to give my entire team brand new sunglasses and they can wear them whenever they want. And, you guys are grown men, do what you want. That's kind of paraphrasing the thing. And so then Genji Arnold's comment was, this drama is what makes sports great. Whatever disagreements you have off the field creates a reason to watch, and you settle it on the field. I've changed my view on this in my years working in esports. The model doesn't work if we keep letting brand sponsorships be the only revenue model, because they will naturally want to de-risk and sanitize the conflicts inherent in the human element that makes sports great. I hope our industry / audience can lean in harder to letting players be themselves and showcasing the good and bad consequences of letting that happen. There are definitely some lines that shouldn't be crossed, but at the moment we are drawing them far too safely. So for me, I kind of very much like feel the same way. And at first, I was much like, oh, dude, players need to stop talking smack. We can't be having all this. But now the more I think about it, as long as like he says, you don't cross certain lines, right? You don't talk about people's families or bring up
yeah,
some random drama or some. It's all good fun that just entertains the viewers and makes people care. So
yeah,
ultimately, I feel like both sponsors and then also developers have kind of purified the space to try and make it like this beautiful, no smack talking, GG, good game, I love you at the end of every game, which is not how humans compete. When you compete, you don't like the other person that's on the other side, and then in turn, it creates this whole other conversation. So, just would love to get your thoughts. I thought that was a cool piece as we were talking about like the rivalries in collegiate.
Well, let me. I can kind of just add to this, right? Like the first thing I think about when it comes to the Fortnite scene and this conversation, right? Think about Queasy. Think about how big Queasy got for his clips of desk slamming, right? He's obviously a phenomenal player. Don't get me wrong, but like the virality around his name, a lot came from his anger and excitement around competing. Same thing with Kanata. Kanata was the same way. His competitive nature is what helped him grow such a big, amass a big following and get people engaged in watching him. Now, if you go to YouTube right now and you type in a ton of the top competing Fortnite players and you look at Kanata's views and Queasy's views and you look at some of the other competing players who are doing just as well, if not in some cases better, guess what? Those numbers aren't going to compare. Another example, clicks. He's a personality. People are drawn to him because of how he is when he's competing, right? He's a competitive person. When he's in there, his energy and his personality breaks through in a big way and it makes people excited to watch, right? More of that has to be done in any competitive esport ecosystem to make people interested. And I think that's what Fortnite as a whole, not necessarily Fortnite the game, but Fortnite the community has always kind of struggled with is building the narratives around the players. I see like even more recently, like in the last year and a half, we've seen these media day pieces and stuff come out about the players. And I feel like they're yes, that's good. That's a good step in the right direction, but a lot of it avoids what he was talking about here in that post and what you agree with too is that there isn't enough 1v1 narrative pushes, right? There's not enough of this, okay, this team versus this team, they're both landing on each other, put them in a room together and see what they say, right? Because there could be some fun conversations. And we did some of that when we were at Gamers 8. And you could tell through that content, like if that content was more widespread, there would be a lot more conversations about those teams leading into. Obviously, the distribution of content as well as a whole nother topic because it has to happen consistently. It can't just happen once and all of a sudden everything blows up. But um, I think this is a huge open market for someone to come in, like you find a creator, right? And host like a weekly smack talk YouTube series where it's literally like I don't know, you get like Clicks and Epic Whale versus who was he 1v1 in the other or 2v2 in the other day? Polarize it was Polarized and Kanata. And the smack talk that was happening on the stream was insane between these two teams. Imagine you put them together and you're like, okay, listen, you guys won 2v2 the other day. Talk about it. Talk about who's the better team. Ask the questions that get them riled up. Like, hey, Epic Whale and Clicks won that. Why do you think they beat you? Is it because they're better? And like Kanata and Polarized are going to light up the moment questions like that are asked. So I think there's definitely an open space for it. It's just a matter of either somebody taking the reins and doing it, or we have to build it in some other way and let it like fester and grow in a way that would take probably years and years. And finally, we'll get a similar buy-in. I think the only esport I know that does kind of have that now is League of Legends.
Yeah, there are definitely rivalries in League. Um,
Massive ones.
I don't know that a weekly smack talk show is like what would create that. I think, I mean, just within Fortnite, there was kind of that new ruling. I say new, I think it was probably like 2 years ago at this point, of like
Yeah.
what you say on social media can be like also actioned against. And since then, I think we've seen a lot of players kind of retreat about how open and honest they are on social media about certain situations, just because
Yeah.
like it's not worth it for them just to get, a few more views or impressions, but also risk the potential to lose their spot, let's say in a grand final or something. So it's finding like that balance of allowing that shit talk to happen and then also not being super strict in your action when it happens the first time, right? If
That's
a
fair.
line is crossed, just be like, okay, hey, dude, we saw what you put out. Let's nip that in the bud. Let's not go that far anymore. We understand that there's going to be some discussion and back and forth with players, but that's going to be where we draw our line. And give them a leash, give them some rope that they can actually take that and have those discussions. Because how cool would it be if we had like one of the top NA teams, like let's say like Iamzo and Rise, and then Tayson and Mustache are both landing at the same spot. They're likely not going to because they have the same coach. It makes no sense for them to do that. But let's use that example. They're all landing in the
Mhm.
same spot. And then we see them go back and forth smack talking on Twitter, and then you get buy-in from the NA fans, you get buy-in from the EU fans. You're like, dude, I gotta watch globals because I have to see who wins this off spawn. Like that just seems naturally like an awesome way to get people to care more, because ultimately it's very hard to follow a team in Fortnite, but if you can at least kind of do this team versus that team, it makes it more simplified and easier to understand.
I think the other hard thing for us in the Fortnite space specifically is the ability to swap teammates on a whim, right? You know as well as I do, we've gone into FNCSs not sure who's actually playing together because the week leading up to they swap teammates 6 times, right?
Yeah.
I think I think there's a lot of potential in what could be set teammates for the year. I think there's a lot of potential in that could help grow the space. It obviously wouldn't be the best decision for the players, if I'm being honest, right?
Yeah.
You would know as well as I know, I do. It wouldn't be great for them, especially if they're locking themselves into a situation which we kind of saw with Acorn and Cold in I think it was between Major 2 and 3. But it's definitely one of those things where there has to be something that can be done, but no one's figured it out quite yet. And again, hopefully discussions like this spark an idea. Maybe a listener, somebody listening to the effing story is like, you know what, I have an idea that might make this work, or I can make obviously not necessarily just influencing smack talk, but finding a way to create narratives between people. I think if you took like a we clutch up, right, in the style of those videos, shout out SPG on the voice. Um, and you take like a resub style of editing and you take the drama from the scene, like clips from streams where people are smack talking each other during 2v2s and stuff like that, and made content like that, it would do very well for the creator of the content, but it would also do well for the space because they're building narratives around the players. That's what we lack the most, is we just don't, like, not enough people in the casual space have any kind of investment in players outside of maybe clicks um and Savage, if I had to be honest. When we're talking just the pure casual side of things.
Yeah. So you're saying we need the Fortnite guy back?
No. Oh god, no. No. No.
I've thought about
Man.
doing something similar, but like, I can't be asked to care about children's drama. And I think that's like, for adults like myself, a huge kind of barrier to caring about some of this, because
Yeah.
I think it was KXRR put out a stat that the oldest player playing at globals is 22 years old, and most of the players are in their teenage years. So it's like, dude, I don't care what children do. I like to watch Fortnite, but like the smack talk that they do is between them, and I want nothing. I don't want to be a part of it. But hey, like you said, maybe there is someone listening that's like, yes, give me this. I'm all
Yeah.
about this. Give me all this drama.
Listen, if you're going to take this idea, I 100% support it. Just don't spread a misinformation. That is my biggest pet peeve in the Fortnite space, and that was my biggest issue with the Fortnite guy and others, is that they like use their platform to either spin stories that are damaging to players when part of the things that they're spinning are false. Like, um, or they're using their platform to spread information for impressions and the wrong reasons and don't look at a full picture, right? Again, part of the full picture series is like most of the stuff that is put out on Twitter that by any decision Epic makes ever, no matter what, it has negativity and it's almost instant negativity without any kind of test support. Like I remember when the conversation about Siphon was around, right? When Siphon first got removed, I was not a fan of it, but I raised the question: can this slow down the pace of the game, right? And because of like the phrasing of it, because it was positive, it wasn't like okay, we'll see, like it wasn't like dang, I hate Siphon being removed immediately. Um, I got basically shit for it. And that's just like how it goes. And if you look back at that tweet, I never was like, I'm a fan of Siphon being removed. I literally just phrased it in a way that's like, do you think this could slow the way the gameplay works? Does this adjustment make difference? And that's the biggest problem is like as a community, I feel like we reward the misinformation and just the hate and the negativity too much before we take a moment and take a step back and think about things. So hopefully, if somebody does take that idea, they run with it in a good way, not necessarily like super negative or try to spin narratives that are damaging to players. Because again, that was part of the problem. That was the biggest problem with the Fortnite guy. Is that like I remember there was a Creo story, and in the Creo story, he wasn't telling the full picture, and like he got in serious trouble. Like and don't get me wrong, Creo wasn't perfect in the situation, but he manipulated a lot of the facts in the video. And at the time, Creo wasn't a big creator; he couldn't defend himself. So,
So let's talk about some of this misinformation, disinformation stuff that goes around. I think the biggest one is we've had two teams removed from the FNCS Global Championship. They won't be competing in Copenhagen. We have a player that has to play as a solo because he has been removed. And I think this is a great example of what you just mentioned is there's a lot of immediate reactions seeing players removed from leaderboards, seeing players removed from the ability to compete, and ultimately it's emotional. It's not based on fact. It's not based on like what's going on. It's players deserve this. They qualified. Nothing should change because nothing ever should change based on what I believe. And we saw a lot of people come out
mhm.
and say like, dude, let them play, like all this nonsense. And if you guys are just listening, you don't necessarily know what I'm talking about. It is in the rules that the players that have a residency, a sole residency in Russia, are ineligible for prizing for competing within Fortnite. This is nothing new. This was announced, I want to say, like a month
Last in
after.
March.
Yeah. Over a year ago, a year and a half ago, right after Russia invaded Ukraine, and pretty much Fortnite was reacting to the sanctions that the U.S. government and NATO put on Russian economic systems, which basically says like we can't pay Russian people as a U.S. based company, and there's a lot of other like it's hard for Russian citizens to travel outside of Russia right now. You need special visas. You need a lot of time to be able to do that. So it's been in the rules that these players are ineligible for prizing. And as part of the prizing, that is included the FNCS Global Championship qualification. So if you qualified to go to Copenhagen, you are ineligible for that prizing, and that's why these players ultimately got removed. So
Mhm.
then everyone freaked out. They're like, this is nonsense. These players went to different countries to play, and ultimately, it's not where they play. Again, you can't play in Russia. If you play in Russia, then you're automatically disqualified. But you
Yeah.
can't also be a resident of Russia because then when they try and get your documentation to get you to travel here, they're like, dude, you're a Russian citizen. We can't help you here. Like this is based on political sanctions. There's almost nothing we could do unless we had like a year to 9 months to be able to get a proper visa for that person. So a lot of things went on. You kind of shared something from Malibuca and then got into a whole discussion with Boop about let me just let you talk about what you and Boop were chatting
Of
about.
course. No, listen, to start, I respect Boop a lot and what he does for the community. I said this in my responses to him too. Despite his immediate, like, I don't know, like immediate criticism of me from the first tweet that he responded, it was um, it was definitely another example of misinformation. And maybe I shouldn't have started my reply phrase with Boop, the king of misinformation. But Boop has been kind of doing this for a while, where he's very much pro player, right? Anything that has to do with the player, he will blindly kind of support, which in some ways I get it, right? He's a content creator. The support of the players around him is very, very important, right? But sometimes he does it at the expense of spreading misinformation and not providing a full picture, right? So his argument, to sum it up, because they are very long tweets, and if you really want to look at them, you just go to the replies on Life W Panda's Twitter. Um, and so they're very long, but to sum it up, Boop basically was like, "This isn't fair to the players. They were paid out in Major Two. Um, they should be able to get at least paid out for their global winnings, right?" Which, if you know anything about politics or just general business, you can't pay out an opposing country in taxes during a war, right? US is not on the side of Russia in the Russia-Ukraine war. It's just not the case. And so sanctions came down, businesses can no longer work with Russian banks. So, in light of this, there were some players who adapted, right? Malabuka went out of his way, spent months traveling to get citizenship, proper citizenship in Serbia so that he can collect on his earnings, right? Whereas others tried to, and maybe they were given misinformation, um, not from Epic, to be clear, because it was very clear in the rules, but misinformation from community members that they could just travel somewhere else and be able to circumvent some of this stuff. And it worked in Major Two. They got a different bank account that wasn't Russian. And this is from what I can tell. And they went to a different location and had an address that was not Russian, right? So guess what? If you have a system that has checks and balances and checks the address, location, and the bank account, and they're neither of them are Russian, it's going to pay out. Now, obviously, the other part of his discussion in his defense was, "Oh, well, they knew they were wrong. It's fine. We get the rules, but why were they paid out for Major Two and then not Major Three?" Was like, and how could Epic of Epic's caliber not catch that they were Russian? Like, not catch that they were breaking the rules sooner? Is basically what the argument was. And number one, the problem with that argument is now you've like the whole community has brought so much attention to it that Epic could be open to lawsuits and now open to having to get the money back from these players. That's number one, and that could cause huge problems for the players who spent all that money to travel, got paid out some of it, right, and now may have to return it on top of losing all the money that they travel. Like, that's just a whole mess. Um, but number two, part of this discussion is like, oh, they were basically told the day after they won Major Three that they are disqualified from earning prizing or their global spot. And if you know as well as I do, when something happens or information comes to light, there has to be an investigation before any major business just assumes something, right? That's why a lot of times, like even in our experience, we've seen like cheaters in the game be able to play like multiple rounds before they're like officially caught because there's a round of checking that goes into it before they can be removed, right? It's just how it goes. So I'm sure what happened is in the lead up to the end of Major Three, red flags were raised somewhere, right? So Epic starts an investigation, and it could have been an internal review of Major Two's finances. It could have been a multitude of things that could have struck the investigation, and the investigation just happened to end in the weekend, either the weekend leading up to Major Three or just after Major Three had concluded, right? The grand finals. And so, based on the investigation, they had to make their ruling immediate and definitive that they can't compete. And to be fair, no one should argue that they should be able to compete. They broke the rules. The rules have been clear since last year, and based on everyone, or at least Boop's argument on this, okay, it's fair. They broke the rules, whatever. But like, if you're acknowledging that they broke the rules, you're acknowledging that they shouldn't be like competing. So I don't like. He tried to make it again a bit of a narrative spin about oh, this is all about um well, why did they get paid out for major 2, not major 3? Like that leads them, because they got paid out for major 2, to believe that they should be able to compete in major 3. Well, guess what? If they competed outside of Russia in major 2, like they already at that point opened themselves up to it, right?
Well,
And
and
they took
with
that risk.
as large of a system as Epic Games has, it's probably just flagging certain routing numbers, which would then deem you ineligible for prizing. So,
Mhm.
like, a bank's routing number will tell you what bank you're sending the money to. And if it's one of the Russian banks that are under sanctions, it's probably flagged in the system and then they can't pay them out. So, like you said, the players probably went around the system. And just to clarify, Swizzy and Putrick won Major 3, not Major 2.
Yeah. But
Um,
they won prizing in major 2, which was paid out.
Yes. And then they were not paid out for the prizing they won in Major 3, nor are they going to be going to Global Championships. So, like, there's just a lot that could have gone on. And, like, I am all for the players playing. Like, they are not involved in this system at all.
Yeah.
At no way are they at fault for the war happening, for the sanctions happening. But at the same time, like, this is just something out of Epic's hands pretty much, as well as like something they've clearly stated in their rules. And if your only argument is I didn't read the rules, that is a terrible argument because that's just ignorance of what happened. And for me, I hate that. Swizzy and Putrick played so well. They look
So
like they've
good.
been a team that could compete at the global championship, and I was really excited to see them play. So I'm gutted for the players as like people. Um, and ultimately, like the whole situation sucks. Like it's because of a war. There's people dying. They could be way
Yeah.
worse. We could be talking about people getting killed versus like, oh, we don't get a chance to win millions of dollars. So there is kind of a whole other side of this where like you do feel for the players, but again, you have to
Yeah.
look at the facts of it. And as much as it may suck, like it is what it is. This is the ruling. It's not going to change. And now, hopefully, this wakes up all the other players that want to compete and may be living in Russia. There are going to be now barriers to entry. You
Yeah.
cannot play as a Russian resident. You cannot compete from Russia. And even if you move, that doesn't mean you're a resident in a different country. So again, it sucks the fact that now there's this like massive cost for players, Russian players to play Fortnite because now they need to move and then also find residency in a different country, which is probably not easy, but it's out on the table. And if any other excuses come up, like there's no reason that you could hide.
Yeah. And it look, it is super unfortunate for the players. Um and it's a super unfortunate situation. Like I'm not sitting here arguing that it sucks for the players, because it does. But to sit here and like blame Epic for it is just, it doesn't make sense. It's not like Epic Games is not just like, yo, I don't want Pootrick and them to play. Like, I don't like them. Like, no, guys, like this is it's way bigger than Epic as a company. So no matter what the argument it is genuinely invalidated by the fact that this is a political issue. This is not anything close to that. And another conversation starter is, or a conversation point that people had, and I think this is a fair one to talk about, is that um, some people just can't afford to up and move their life, right, and become a resident of another place, um in that way, and that makes total sense, right? There are now there are ways that you can do it, and I'm not saying every Russian Fortnite player should go out there and start an LLC, or start a business of some sort, get some funding, move, like do all this stuff, like no, right? But if you're a Putrick, right, who just won a major three, right? The biggest FNCS of the year outside of global, and you have the potential to walk away with hundreds of thousands of dollars from an event. Like you definitely invest $20,000 to move somewhere else and get residency somewhere else, right? Because you're leaving money on the table at that point. So I'm not saying, and I like that discussion of like not everybody is going to be able to do it, but Putrick, 100%, like that's an investment that you got to make, and it sucks, right? You shouldn't have to go through this because the country you reside in has decided to take on a war, right?
Yeah.
It's not fair to the players whatsoever. But at the end of the day, it is no one. There's no one that you can really blame, and I feel like that's why the easy shots win at Epic. When it's like Epic is just like, the fuck do we do? Like, it's not their choice. But I get it, right? And again, the weird argument to finish this off of, oh, well, they got paid for Major 2, so they should get paid for Major 3. No. Like, them getting paid out, it probably, like I said before, raised some serious red flags, and now could cause serious issues for Putrick as well as Epic because they got paid out. So, nevertheless, that's my rant. Respect Boop and what he does for the community with his maps and scrims. I just would wish that he would take a step back and before he openly attacks Epic, being a very player focused guy, he looks at the full picture because that's one of those situations where it's like he was going in on Epic's character, he was going in on my character for agreeing with Epic, and it's like, dude, has nothing to do with agreeing with Epic. It has everything to do with opening your eyes and looking at what's happening in the world. Like Epic didn't start the war in Ukraine, in Russia. Like it's just it's baffling to me. But that is what it is. Boop, uh, get it together, man.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very easy argument to take because Epic's not going to come out and say anything. So like ultimately you take the side of the players and it looks like the fun like I don't want to say like well played move on social media, but like definitely the favorable move just to be like, hey, like let the players play. There's literally no downsides to that. Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? Nothing. Like that's the worst that happens from that. So whether or not he fully believes what he puts on social media is a whole nother kind of discussion because there's a lot of easy talking points that I've seen creators throw out there. I've even fallen not victim, fallen into that trap before of just throwing things out on social media that are easy discussion points because it's like just a win-win. Um, anyway, let's get off of that. We are at about an hour. We could either wrap it up here or we could dive into globals for a little bit. What are you feeling, my friend?
We can talk about global.
All right, let's just give it a quick discussion. I don't want to
Hmm.
go into maybe if you want, you can pick a prediction. I'm not going to put you on the spot for that, but the overall format. This is the first time we've ever kind of seen something like this for a LAN in Fortnite. And if you guys don't know, it is a 3-day tournament. Day one is called the upper bracket. So that is all the teams that qualified through majors 1, 2, and 3. They're competing, and the top 25 teams advance to the finals. Then on day two, the lower bracket plays, the bottom 25 teams from day one, and all the teams that qualified from last chance major compete. And again, the top 25 teams advance to the final. Those teams on the last day, day three, play in the final, and that's where all the prizing's given out. It's a 6-day final format, which is very different. Typically, we see a 2-day, 6 games apiece format. So I'm interested just to hear your thoughts. Like, what do you feel about this? I have my own like feelings pretty strongly about the format, but I'm interested to hear how you feel.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks not seeing a 2 day grand finals like we're typically used to. Not seeing the 12 games played out is it sucks. I can't lie, but I also like looking at the full picture. I get it. And the Russia situation is the perfect example of why their format is the way that it is, right? For competitive integrity's sake, they couldn't invite teams that didn't qualify, right? So they had to make a format that, number one, didn't take kids out of school more than they had to, right? Because this is during the school year. And number two, they had to find a format that could allow for people not to make it into the country, right? And that's essentially what happened. So the 2 day format basically allows for those extra teams to qualify their way through, and that was all through Last Chance Major. And those Last Chance Major teams now basically fill the gap if anything breaks apart when it comes to visas or travel restrictions, like the Russia situation or anything like that. So again, I get it. I still would have liked maybe throw the 2 day finals on Saturday, Sunday, and then make the two qualifying days leading up to on Thursday and Friday. Like, I think the format is cool, but the lack of 12 game finals does stink.
Yeah, I'm very much along those same lines. I think it's really cool to have like a qual. I don't know, like so we played qualifiers already, and the fact that like now we're having to replay a qualifier right before the final is like questionable to me. I feel like if there was guaranteed prizing, and there might be, we still don't know what the prizing is for globals, which also like what's going on? Why can we not know that? Anyway, I don't like playing 2 days of qualifiers and playing 1 day of a final. It seems like the qualifiers then are more important based on only playing for 1 day versus uh, 2 days on the qualifiers. So like the format just leads me to say like why have we played every other final style lobby one way and then now we're changing it for globals? Like that doesn't make sense. We've done this for the past however many years. um and I understand trying something new because ultimately it's going to be way easier for your average fan to follow if it's just a single day. You don't have to come back the second day to figure it out.
Yeah.
But for the players, I don't feel like that's a fair format. You've worked so hard to get to this point. A lot of teams go back after day one, VOD review, figure out their mistakes, figure out what other teams are doing, and make great adjustments in our day two teams. I mean, we've seen a ton of great day two comebacks, and we're going to miss out on that, which is unfortunate because those are some of the cooler storylines we ever see in Fortnite, whether or not they're discussed all the time. But I, I like the idea of almost like a seeding, but I don't like the idea of the seeding lasting longer than the finals. I guess is like my biggest qualm with the entire thing.
Yeah, it would be tough. I wonder how they would, like, they would have to have two lobbies running if they were to do 1 day of seeding and 2 day of finals. You know what I mean? Or it would have
Yeah.
to be a double day. You know what I
Or it's a
mean? Like it
4 day
have
tournament.
or a 4 day tournament. Yeah, exactly. I think the only the only thing I can say, right, is like to your point specifically about like the VOD reviewing and whatnot. The best chance these players have to VOD review is after day one. You watch all the VOD from day one, whether you're competing in it or not, and you get the idea of what these players are doing well, what these player mistakes these players are making, and you plan to implement whatever you can for the final day. That's the only option they have. That's not ideal, but at least it's not like just showing up and doing 1 day of 6 games, right? Because that would just be rough. So I think there's some value in vodding the qualifiers. Obviously, players can play differently out of qualifiers if they're confident that they're going to make it through and all that stuff. So that's definitely a separate discussion. But to finish it off, three teams that I think are going to place in the top 10: Malabuka, Thomas HD, Queasy Veno, Epic Whale, and Clicks. Calling it now.
Okay. That epic whale one's kind of a strange one in my opinion, although he is like a beast at land, so you gotta give him that little buff for that. He's gonna come in much more confident than a lot of people.
That team is gonna surprise people. I'm almost positive.
I would like to be surprised by them. It'd be good for the game.
Yeah.
The one, so I really do like though the fact that there's kind of like a reward for players that qualified through majors versus the players that qualified through last chance. So like I don't want to say the format's totally bad. It's definitely not, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
Yeah.
I have certain qualms with it, and I think there's some good aspects. If we just added a second day, I don't know that I would really have anything to complain about if we played a 2-day final format. Because I think it's cool. At the very least, the players that don't qualify to finals get a free trip to Copenhagen, get to experience this. And I
Yeah,
mean, we both know from speaking to players how much these moments and experiences mean, and how big it is just to be able to go and hang out with your peers, talk to players, meet some players that you've maybe never met before, or even just hang out with some guys that you play video games with all the time but live in different places. So you get to like
yeah,
finally hang out in person. Plus, Copenhagen's a cool city. We've both been there
very
a
cool.
couple of times. So
Yeah, I'm
that
excited to go
is.
back.
Oh, yeah. What should we expect from the Panda Man at Globals?
So you already know I'm the stage host.
Okay,
No,
nice.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, guys. I'm not a part of the talent team that I know of. But I am actually going to be doing a bunch of content. So, live moments from the stage and the stadium. Probably some live interviews. Some pre-recorded quick post to X interviews. I'm also planning on doing a post show with some of the personalities that are going to be there as well. So you definitely keep an eye on Twitter for all of that. That's where it's all going to live. Some of it might be posted to YouTube, but most of it will just live solely on Twitter. So definitely make sure to follow me for all of that. If you want like a different view from home, that's definitely going to be the best way to do it.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I'll be watching along. I'll probably get some Twitter fingers at some point too, just because I loved talking about Fortnite, but I will not be there. Um, Panda, let's wrap it up there. That's a great place to end. And tell people where to find you. I think you've pretty much for the last hour told people what you're going to be up to for the next year. So if you have anything else, go ahead, shout yourself out.
Twitter.com/lifewpanda. That's the best place to communicate and conversate with me. I'm pretty big on Twitter. I'm pretty open on Twitter, and big personally on the platform. So if you ever want to have a conversation, I'm right there. If you ever want to watch the content on your TV, though, you don't want to watch it on your phone or on maybe on a desktop via Twitter with 720p. All the content is posted in 4K on YouTube at Life with Panda. So definitely go check it out. Appreciate you, SPG, for bringing me on.
Anytime, bro. Anytime. Well, appreciate you coming on. Appreciate everyone listening at home, watching, wherever you may be. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, as well as now being fully posted on Twitter or X. I don't know that that's ever going to feel right to not call it Twitter anymore. Thank you guys for listening. Really appreciate it. Feel free to leave a comment, review, reply, whatever it may be. If you have anything, hit me up on Twitter. You can shoot me a DM, somebody's gun on Twitter. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time. Peace.